Hey everyone, welcome to my first video. Today I'm going to be playing Red-Black Devotion in a daily event, and as you guys might know, I've been playing a lot of Magic Online recently, and have been just trying to get the feel for the lay of the land, play a bunch of different decks, and this is one of the decks that has not seen a ton of play. Like saw play at Pro Tour Theros, and a little bit after that, but not too much. Just like kind of got outclassed by Mono Blue and Mono Black Devotion. Same thing kind of happened with Mono Green Devotion, but I think this deck has a decent amount of potential. One of the best things I like about this deck is that the threats are very hard hitting. Like, you can get into a stalemate in the mid game and just start drawing like these really powerful threats, which you normally don't get out of an aggressive deck. So, like, say you're playing Mono Blue Devotion, like you have a certain amount of cards that are good in that deck and like very powerful top decks like Biden, Thassa, Master Waves, but then past that everything else is just an enabler. Whereas in this deck, even something like a Frostburn Weird, like, which granted like Mono Blue Devotion has access to also, but it's like that is basically a 4-power attacker. You also have like Boros Reckoner, Flame Wreath Phoenix, Stormbreath Dragon, all these super powerful cards, and none of like the Judge's Familiar type stuff. So against Mono Black Devotion and Blue White Control, like these decks that have a bunch of removal, I liked the idea of having a deck like that that was just very robust. So started working on this, and I've played a few different versions that I've written about, and I was like talking to some people on Twitter too and seeing what they liked for this deck, because I felt like there are still people out there playing this deck. So a lot of people suggested Fanatic Amogus over where I have the Phoenix now, and that was fine. I played with that for a little bit, but like I said, like there are decks like Mono Black Devotion or whatever splash they have, and Blue White Control, where they just have a lot of removal, and it is their job to kill all your creatures. That is what they're trying to do. So a card like Fanatic Amogus isn't that good against decks like that. Like, yeah, there are matchups where they don't really disrupt you very much, and maybe you can use that to like deal them 5 damage. But I found like most of the time it was like your board is clear, and then you have this Fanatic, and it just doesn't do a whole lot, and it's like a pretty bad top deck in the mid to late game. So I went with the Phoenix, and I've been liking that so far. It's like a pretty powerful card. Most of the time I think it's just like a 5/5 flyer for 4, which is obviously pretty good. People have said that, oh, I don't like it because you can kill it with the trigger on the stack, but out of the cards that can really do that, there's Lightning Strike and Bile Blight, and like, Bile Blight is going to be good against you almost like no matter what stage of the game you're in. It's still a removal spell against your creature-heavy deck, so that's always going to be good. But like, Lightning Strike doesn't see that much play, and it is very rare when you're presenting threats like turn after turn that they have the luxury of keeping 2 mana open for something like Bile Blight. And, generally that's the card that they use to kill like your early creatures anyway. They'll save their stuff like Ultimate Prices, Doom Blades, even Devour Flesh for your bigger guys. So Phoenix has been pretty good. Other than that, there's like been some talk about like the 2-drop slot. Like we have these Eidolons that are obviously not so good in the matchups where they're trying to go under you. So against like a White Weenie deck or a Burn deck or something, like this card is obviously not that good. But for something like Control and Mono Black, which I feel are probably the 2 best decks and definitely the ones that you need to watch out for the most, this card is great. And then like there are some people that were questioning the Burning Tree Emissaries, just as like you can't really play a bunch of these on turn 2 and then play another one of your 2-drops just because all of your other stuff is double red. And that's true, but most of the time it's like you play one of these double red 2-drops, turn 3 you play a Burning Tree into like a Hammer or another 2-drop, and then turn 4 you have a Nykthos turn, or even like if you have 2 Burning Trees and another 2-drop, you can play Nykthos on turn 3 and then play like a Stormbreath Dragon or something if your draw is particularly good and they haven't disrupted you or anything. So the fact that Burning Tree costs 0 effectively, like you need the 2 up front, but past that it is basically free, provides you 2 devotion. It doesn't work that well with the rest of your cards. Like obviously if we had like a red-green hybrid card or something or whatever, that would be perfect, but we don't. But it is still worth playing. It is a card that I side out a decent amount of the time against stuff like Blue-White and Mono-Black. But I feel like in game 1, especially with this deck, you want to kind of just like maximize your chances of having a nut draw. Like it is very possible that these Nykthoses could be Mutavaults, for example, and then we could just play like a more normal deck, but I feel like having Nykthos in this deck gives you a draw that is very tough for other decks to beat, whereas like Mutavault is going to be solid all the time, and you know that, but for right now, I've been liking the Nykthoses. Just lets you get a pretty huge tempo advantage on your opponent when you're playing 2 spells a turn, starting on like turn 3 or turn 4, especially when they're big spells like Storm Breaths and Phoenixes and stuff. And it also allows you to overload Mizzium Mortars, which I think is a pretty big deal, especially now that, you know, like there are always decks with Caryatid and Courser Crewfix, but it seems like now, if you are playing a green deck, you certainly have access to those cards, and that's kind of a big deal because both those guys brick wall your little ground guys pretty hard. So that's kind of like the gist of the deck. I've been experimenting with some versions with like either Cackler or Fire Drinker Satyr in the main deck, just because like most of the versions of this deck were sideboarding 1-drops against Control and Devotion, which I think is fine. And I was playing against, you know, most of the time was playing against those decks, so I was like, well, what if we just swap that package? So we moved the 1-drops into the main deck, and that made it so I had to change a few things around, where the Phoenixes were probably better as Fanatics if that was what I was trying to do, was just go under them, get on the board as fast as possible, and then play a Fanatic, like, you know, hopefully with a hammer in place, you can deal them a bunch of damage, and they can't really interact with the hammer, and then plus your guy has haste. So that version was fine. You lose the robustness, like I was talking about earlier, where it's like one of the big draws to the deck, because you can't really play Fire Drinker Satyr and Stormbreath Dragon in the same deck, just because it puts too much pressure on you to have a really good draw. Like, you need to curve 1 to 5, and especially if you're splashing a color and have lands that ETB tapped and stuff, like, it's pretty tough for you to actually make that work. So I went all out, started with just Fire Drinker Satyr, and then I eventually added the Cacklers also, so I had 8 1-drops, no dragons. And then at that point, the Frostburn Weirds were kind of mopey, because it's like, I like this guy a lot against the other attacking decks, especially with Anger of the Gods in the sideboard, but once you're playing 8 1-drops, you don't really want this. You'd rather have something like more Ash Zealots or Mogus' Warhound, something like that, and the Warhounds were really, really good in that version, but not so much in this one. And yeah, I mean, like, I played the 1-drop version a little bit, and it was good against the matches that I expected it to be good in, and then the other ones you just like lose so much ground when you play like a 1-drop and they play a Courser, because you just get brickwalled if you don't have something like a Warhound, or like even if you use a removal spell on the Courser, like you're still just like attacking them for 2. It's almost better to just like build up your board and then try and kill stuff and like get in big swings rather than little swings. So I am now back on the big flyer package plan thingy, and I started with the White Splash for Chain of the Rocks, and it was good, you know, for what you're trying to do, but Tenjum had just won the Open with Mono Black Devotion splashing green, so he had access to Abrupt Decay and Golgari Charm after sideboard, and that was like a pretty obvious thing to board in against a red-white deck that has like maybe a kind of bad matchup against Black Devotion decks, where it's pretty clear that they're going to have something like Assemble the Legion, plus they already have Chain of the Rocks, so it's like they are automatically citing in those cards to beat your best cards against them, so I went looking for their options. Someone suggested a Black Splash to me on Twitter, so I have Dreadboard, some Ultimate Prices in the sideboard, and other than that, I've been trying to keep the splash to a minimum. Like I said earlier, you don't want a bunch of ETB tap lands. I have 5 right now, and the Guildgate might actually be stretching it just a little bit, but other than that, I have 26 lands total with 4 Nykthos. It might seem like a lot of lands, but again, like the curve is kind of high on the top end, and for something like Nykthos, especially in a deck like this where all of your spells are double colored, it's tough to count Nykthos as a land. So if you go like 2-drop into 2-drop and then Nykthos, on turn 4 Nykthos is going to start making mana, but if you have like a 1-lander with a Nykthos, that Nykthos basically like should not be a land as far as like whether or not you're considering to mulligan or not. There are some times where I keep like Mountain Nykthos if I'm on the draw and my hand is particularly strong, where I have multiple Burning Tree Emissaries or something, where like I have 2 turns to draw land, or, you know, a red producing land, and if I hit, I will almost certainly win just because my draw is so explosive. But most of the time, you will have hands with Red Source and Nykthos, and you'll just be forced to mulligan because you can't take that risk of just not doing anything for too long, because this deck is very much like a tempo-oriented deck. Like, you have to get a pretty firm grasp on the early game in order to have a chance. So 26 lands, a lot of lands, but again, I would say like the third and fourth Nykthos kind of count just as spells. You know, these are like ritual effects and not really lands. So we have 22 lands that make red, and I think that's about the normal that I would want to play Boros Reckoner and expect to be able to cast it on turn 3. Obviously, there are some games where you can backdoor into Reckoner with like 2-drop, turn 3, Emissary Nykthos, make 4 red, play a Reckoner. So like the Nykthoses kind of count for Reckoner also, but you definitely want to be able to cast this on turn 3 every game. So I do have a lot of lands, but that's fine because we also have the Hammer Bifrost, which has just been fantastic. When I had Fnatic, it was great because it was a source of devotion that they couldn't kill, but it just like really impressed me the fact that you know, this deck already has a decent amount of things to do with its mana, which is cool because you don't really get flooded with this deck too often because you have stuff like Storm Breath, the Phoenix, like you have a lot of high-end stuff, and Hammer also helps that. So even if we do get a little bit flooded, if we have a Hammer, like usually everything's okay. We're still committing things to the board, using our mana every turn, and so on. So that's about it. I don't feel like anything is like too outlandish for this deck. Like I think this is pretty normal aside from like Phoenix over Fnatic, and if you were playing against decks with like not a ton of removal, I could see Fnatic instead of Phoenix, but we'll see. I mean, I've played a few tournaments with the Phoenixes and they've been good, so hopefully I can sway you guys on this one. I guess the only other thing for the mana base is like the 2 mana confluence. I was like kind of sketchy. I thought these were kind of sketchy when someone suggested playing these over Guild Gates, but so far they've been fine. It's like the last land that you play, you know, because like you don't have that many cards on the splash, so you don't usually need to play this early to like Dreadbore something on turn 2 or whatever. Like these are mainly there to kill Desecration Demons and Planeswalkers and stuff. So the confluences have been fine. If you're expecting a bunch of aggro decks, like maybe this list would change a decent amount, like you would cut the Eidolons and maybe the confluences and stuff, but as for the sideboard, I have Anger of the Gods. Just like in real life, I don't think I would feel like I had to play Anger, but the fact that it's on Magic Online and there's a lot of like white weenie decks and mono red aggro decks, even mono green devotion is reasonably popular, and Anger just kind of covers your bases. And it might seem weird that like, you know, most of your guys die to Anger and then you side in Anger, but it's really not that tough to do because like we're gonna side out Eidolons almost certainly, and then past that you don't have much to do on turn 2. Maybe you spend turn 2 like mortarsing a guy or something. So it doesn't look super strange if you're sandbagging an Anger of the Gods, and if your 2-drop is Frostburn Weird, it's even better just because you get to develop your board and still have the potential to wrath them. So this has been pretty good at doing the job that I wanted it to, although there are matchups like White Weenie where they have 4 Brave the Elements and it makes it super awkward, so you kind of have to get into spots where like, you know, I talked about this a little bit with Mono Green Devotion and playing Pelucranos against them, and it's like maybe you just have to get into a spot where like you tap out so that they know that you don't have anything, and then you just like send your Reckoner in there, and it would like, you know, normally 2 or 3 for 1 them or whatever, but if they have Brave, they can just be like, oh, Brave, kill your guy, this guy's brick walling me, that's an issue. So you just offer up the trade Reckoner for Brave, and you know, depending on what the game state looks like or what their hand is, like maybe if they have a second Brave the Elements, they just snap that off or whatever. But you know, you might have to actually work to make Anger work, which I'm fine with. So the rest of the sideboard is another Dreadboard, 2 more Ultimate Prices. Desecration Demon is probably the biggest issue for this deck, just because it's so big and it's so cheap, and you know, if they're doing their job, they're keeping your board low, it's like you might get into a spot where like, yeah, you can sack your other guy to tap their demon to attack with Storm Breath or something, but that might not accomplish you anything, especially if they just untap and kill your dragons. So I want actual hard removal for Desecration Demon. I'm not planning on just like swarming the board and trying to tap down their demon repeatedly, because that generally doesn't work out against a deck with a bunch of removal. So I definitely like having the hard removal for Demon, and you don't really get that if you don't have a splash. Like, kind of similarly, you could play Harness by Force, but that again is just, you know, it only solves the problem for a turn. It's basically the same thing as just like, you know, sacking your guy to tap it or whatever. And then if they have anything like a Mutavault where they can just tap their own demon, like, yeah, you kill their Mutavault, maybe get in some damage, but it's not as effective as actually just tapping their demon, or killing their demon, sorry. So I definitely want the hard removal. And again, like, this isn't a burn deck. This is a deck that hits hard with, like, Reckoners and Flamery Phoenix and Stormbreath Dragon. Like, you are not looking to, like, burn them out with Fanatic or Active Treason their demon to, like, get in the last 6 points or whatever. Like, if you think of this as just, like, a Jund Monsters deck, basically, like, yeah, you might have things at your disposal that you could use to deal them incremental damage, something like Fanatic, but you are not interested in lava axing them. Like, you need to build a board presence and kill them with the creatures that you have. So that's why Active Treason or Harnessed by Force, whatever you want to play, is not all that effective. So, also for, slow, grindy matchups, control decks, sort of Mono Black Devotion, we have a third hammer, which is kind of risky because it's legendary, but generally if they don't kill it, you're very much ahead. There are some situations where I've had a hammer in play and a hammer in my hand, and then I don't have enough gas to, like, keep up. Like, yeah, I'm trading in, like, my lands for 3/3s and stuff, but maybe they Bioblight me or something, and it gets to the point where if this hammer was any other card, I could win. But I think just maximizing your chances of having hammer, but also, trying to not get flooded with hammers is your best chance to win. So I like 2 main deck against basically everyone, but I want the third one against the control decks, even if there is a risk of me having 2 and them, not dealing with the first one. So, and then I have a couple Chandras, which have been fine, but not great. I keep thinking that, like, you play against decks like Mono Black Devotion, and if you're able to kill their big threat like Desecration Demon, this can pick off a Lifebane Zombie if they're playing those, and it can get their demon out of the way, and then past that, if you are killing their demons, like keeping their board relatively clear, this can draw you cards, which will help just, like, weather the storm of all the removal. But I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like, maybe I need to be playing this card better than I have been, but it seems like, generally they use their bad removal first, and they'll keep their removal that kills anything for the thing that they need to kill, like whether it is Chandra or Stormbreath Dragon or whatever. So, basically what I'm saying is that, like, I've played Chandra, and it has pinged them for 1 and then gotten downfalled, which I guess is fine, because if they don't have a downfall, then I'll probably run away with the game with Chandra. So, I don't know. This is like another one of those things where, like, I feel like I need more stuff against control. And maybe this is not the best card, but I'm not sure what is. I think if I had the White Splash and they didn't have Disenchants, I would want to assemble the Legion in this kind of spot, but it has been exactly fine. And I feel like it has the potential for so much more, so I'm going to keep playing with it. For the Michael Jacob technology, we have Underworld Cerberus, and I don't know, it's cards like this that you just, like, kind of forget exist, It's like you're building this red splash black deck, and I don't know, like, you just forget, like, what black-red cards are available, because, this card doesn't see very much play, but it is actually really, really good at what it does, where it's like you play against blue-white control, and you commit to the board, and then they Supreme Verdict you, and then you play a Cerberus, and unless they Sphere it, like, they're in a pretty bad spot, because it's so tough for them to just, like, kill this, and then weather the storm of, like, the 2 or 3 guys that you got back. It puts a lot of pressure on them, and doesn't give them, like, that buffer turn to cast Sphinx's Revelation to bull ahead. So this is basically, like, the perfect card. And against a deck like Blue-Eye Control, I will board in the Cerberuses and keep the Dragons, because they're both fantastic against them, and the games go that long, and I think that's fine. But against something like a Black Devotion deck, like, the games are actually faster. I think the Black Devotion people should be trying to pressure you in addition to killing your guys. Like, they don't have inevitability necessarily, especially when you have stuff like Hammer in your deck. So you need to put pressure on them and not have your draw clogged down with a bunch of, like, slow bad cards. So I came up with the plan of, like, the 1-drops and the Fanatics and stuff to, like, try and get them when I was on the play, and that worked out reasonably well, and that play involved cutting Stormbreath Dragon, and now I just cut the dragons all the time, even without the 1-drops. And it helps that I have Cerberus to board in and, like, still have a 5-drop against them, like something that has a big impact on the game. But yeah, I mean, like, Cerberus has been very good. They have to kill it, and when they kill it, you probably win. So, other than that, we have Searing Bloods, and this is an experiment. This could be something else. I know that the burn matchup is not the greatest in the world, so this could potentially be, like, the Red Staff or something, but I tried those and was not super impressed by them, just because you're not really drawing cards. You know, like Mono Black Devotion has the option of having Underworld Connections active to go with their staff, and that's just like, you know, their Mondo combo against Burn or whatever. But against this deck, it's like, you know, by turn 5, you're probably hellbent, and you gain maybe like 3 life off the staff or something. So like maybe Tablet of the Guilds would even be better. I know some people have suggested that, but I'm not super sold on that option in general. So what I have these here for now is, you know, any sort of white weenie deck or green devotion deck where you can take time off to kill like their Daring Skyjack or their Voyaging Satyr, and then you're still not losing that much just because you're still dealing them the damage. But what I want to try these for right now is against Black Devotion, just because I felt like there were some games where, you know, I would be doing my thing, and like maybe I would have a Cerberus that would like kill them in a few turns or whatever, but I would just die to pack rats first. Like that would get too out of control, or they just kill me with a Lifebane zombie or something like that. So I'm trying this new plan where like I just want to kill basically every guy they play, and hope that like they don't get any traction, so that by the time we go into like the mid to late game, they are forced to have a connections and draw into the perfect answer. Or if they don't have a connections, I'll stick something like Hammer or Cerberus that they won't have an answer to. So I just need to not die in the meantime. And, you know, Searing Blood is pretty good for that, I think. Like, it might just be worse than more prices. It might just be worse than, like, you know, I think I'm siding out Mortars for these Searing Bloods. So that's kind of awkward too. So, like, maybe this is not the best use, but I want to try it out. So hope you guys don't fault me for that. And I'm pretty excited for this, and I hope that I do not embarrass myself in this daily event for you guys.